In this video, I'm going to be covering all the things about damage that you should know in Helldivers, be explaining how armor penetration really works, and the over penetration bonus damage. I'll also be going over all 6 damage types in Helldivers, and detailing what's special about each one and what they're good at, and I'll be going over some common misconceptions about how damage works. Depending on your armor penetration and the armor level of the enemy you're shooting, there are 3 different types of damage you can deal based on armor penetration alone. I'm going to demonstrate all 3 of these using the Sentinel enemy. The parts I've highlighted in blue have medium armor, red have no armor, and the rest of the body has light armor. If the weapon you're using has greater armor penetration than the armor level of the part you're shooting, then you'll deal over penetration damage. This is indicated by a red hit marker, and over penetration damage deals about 1.7 times bonus damage. So right here I'm using the Redeemer pistol, which has light armor penetration against a target that has no armor, and this is going to give me the over penetration bonus. If I take the same light armor penetration pistol and shoot a part of the enemy that has light armor, then I'll do base penetration damage, which is indicated by a white hit marker and deals the base damage of your weapon. The final damage type based on armor penetration is a deflect. Deflects are indicated by a shield icon with a bouncing bullet. These deal effectively no damage, and occur as long as the target armor is greater than your weapon's armor penetration. So the Redeemer pistol with light armor penetration versus the Sentinel's faceplate with medium armor will give a deflect. To demonstrate this is based solely on armor penetration, I'll use the Slugger shotgun, which has medium armor penetration, against the same targets. So medium armor penetration versus the faceplate that has medium armor will give normal armor penetration. And if I shoot part of the Sentinel that has light armor with medium armor penetration, then I'll get over penetration damage and a red hit marker. With that being said, I wanted to test what happens if I shoot a target that's 2 steps below my armor penetration. And shooting a target that has no armor with medium armor penetration seems to still just do the over penetration damage. So having penetration 1 step above your target's armor should always deal max damage. There are some special exceptions to armor penetration, namely the arc thrower and the flamethrower weapons. And if you use either of these weapons, you'll notice that you don't get a hit marker that indicates armor penetration with them. The reason for this is that they do a different type of damage called flat damage, meaning the damage calculated from these weapons is based on where you hit the enemy and the type of damage. And I'll get into those factors next. There are currently 6 different damage types in Helldivers. These include physical or kinetic, energy, electric, fire damage, explosive damage, and corrosive damage. Explosive damage is done by the autocannon, the EAT, recoilless rifle, most airstrikes, as well as grenades. Explosive weapons deal bonus damage to glowing automaton parts, and this bonus damage is actually very significant. 2 G16 impact grenades, which do 400 damage each, will kill an annihilator tank, and I tested this versus the Liberator Penetrator. The Liberator Penetrator took a little under 4 clips to destroy the tank shooting the same spot. Each clip from the Liberator Penetrator does 1,350 damage, meaning it takes about 5,000 damage to kill an annihilator tank normally. If we take that damage divided by the damage it took to kill the annihilator tank with a grenade, that means it's over a 6 times damage multiplier, and that's without factoring in overkill. Explosive damage type also seems to do similar bonus damage on the abdomen of bile titans and chargers, and while I'm on that subject, I don't know why, but the blitzer shotgun for some reason also does significant damage to charger abdomens, even though other electric damage types don't seem to do bonus damage to the charger abdomen. Weapons that deal energy damage have the prefix LAS in front of them, with the exception being the PLAS Scorcher. These weapons include the Scorcher, the Dagger, the Sickle, the Laser Cannon, the Quasar Cannon, and the LAS Guard Dog Rover. Energy type damage is similar in effectiveness against automatons or against terminids. The exception to this is Shriekers, which can be very easily killed with any energy weapons. If you hit a Shrieker on the wings with the laser cannon, it's basically an instant kill. So the laser cannon and other energy weapons are some of the best options for Shriekers. The laser cannon also very quickly kills Shrieker nests. Another damage type is the electric damage type. Weapons that do electric damage have an arc prefix in front of their name. These weapons include the new blitzer shotgun, the arc thrower, and the Tesla tower turret. Electric damage has similar effectiveness on automatons or terminids. Fire damage can be done by the flamethrower, the incendiary grenade, and the breaker incendiary, as well as the eagle napalm strike. The flamethrower specifically penetrates all armor types. For some reason, the charger's head seems to be an exception to this armor penetration, even though the charger's head should just be heavy armor. When burning the charger's head, you'll see the flames curve away, and the charger dies very slowly. I'm not sure if this is a bug because the flamethrower still penetrates the heavy armor on charger's legs and kills them very quickly with this method. But the other flame weapons will still do damage over time on heavily armored enemies, even if they don't penetrate the armor. Fire damage also lights the ground on fire. Enemies that walk over this ground that's on fire can catch on fire, and they'll take a damage over time. So on top of just doing base damage, fire damage does damage over time. So far, corrosive damage seems to be done exclusively by the gas strike. Corrosive damage affects automatons and terminids similarly, and it does a fairly high damage over time that takes from the enemy's total HP pool. As long as enemies are within the effect of corrosive damage, once they're outside the corrosive cloud, they'll still take a damage over time. You can tell they're taking damage over time by seeing a green cloud around them. This effectively poisons the enemy until they die, and I'm not sure if it's a bug or not, but it seems that chargers will keep bleeding out even after the green cloud effect goes away. But corrosive damage is a pretty good way to deal with heavies like the charger. And finally, there's the most generic damage type, which is physical or kinetic damage. The railgun, the anti-material rifle, and the majority of most guns are going to do this physical damage type. Let me know in the comments though if you do know something unique to the physical damage type. Another really important piece of information about damage that I want to point out is that damage is split into two classes. One of these is armor break damage, which I believe the devs refer to as damage against durable enemy parts, and this damage class is just for breaking off armor from enemies. And the other class is just generic damage, which reduces the enemy's total health pool and will also break body parts off. The flamethrower is an extreme version of something that does a lot of damage but not a lot of armor damage, and as you can see, even though I only shot one of the charger's arms, it never broke the armor off of the arm, even though it did eventually lead to its death. Some weapons on the other end of the spectrum would be the EAT and the Recoilless rifle. Both of these do really high damage towards stripping the armor off of enemies, if you compare it to the base damage versus unarmored parts and other weapons. What's really useful about this is certain enemies will die no matter what, as long as you break off a critical part of their armor or body, and the armor on a charger or a bile titan's head is considered critical, so they'll instantly die if their head armor's ever taken off. If you deal enough armor damage to a non-critical part of an enemy, it simply strips the armor off. Stripped armor has a reduced armor level. For example, this charger had heavy armor on its arms, and now it has no armor on its arms, so just having light penetration will deal max damage. And finally, there's limb damage. Limb damage does damage to whatever specific part of the enemy you're shooting, and after a certain amount of damage, it leads to a dismemberment of that limb. Dismembering a limb that's critical leads to certain death for your target. Examples of these are taking off the heads of warriors and taking off the wings of shriekers. A common misconception is that this is the same thing as taking the enemy's health pool down to 0, but even if you reduce the HP of an enemy, the critical dismemberment will still take the same amount of shots as if you hadn't reduced the HP. For the example here, I shoot the warrior in the abdomen a few times, but it still takes the same 3 shots that it always does with the liberator to dismember its head. Also, hitting a critical dismemberment point isn't the same as hitting a point that is dealing a lot of extra damage to the HP pool. Right here I shoot the warrior twice in the head and then 4 times in the abdomen for a kill with the liberator, versus it normally only taking 5 shots to the abdomen in order to kill a warrior with the liberator. So again, hitting a part that leads to a critical dismemberment is not necessarily the same as hitting a weak spot that deals a lot of damage to the total HP pool. That's it for this video. If you have anything you would like to add, make sure to mention it in the comments, and also subscribe for more videos like this.